Lesson 108 for reading, part 2. Questions to think about before we start today's reading. What did the outside of the haunted house look like? Describe the inside of the haunted house. Why do you think the boys could only guess at the time when they dug at night? Why did the boys think the haunted house would be safe during the day? Why do you think Huck admired Robin Hood so much? Keep those in mind during today's reading because you'll be answering those at the end. Now let us begin. Chapter 18, The Haunted House. Our focus question, what did the outside of the haunted house look like? The boys were back at the dead limb tree around midnight. They sat in the place shadow waiting. It was a lonely place, and the hour was solemn. Spirits whispered in the rustling leaves. Ghosts lurked in the gloomy shadows. The deep baying of a hound floated up out of the distance. An owl answered with mysterious note. The boys were a bit frightened, and they talked little. When they judged that midnight had come, they marched where the moonlit shadow of the limb fell and began to dig. Their hopes started to rise. Their interest grew stronger, and their labor kept pace with it. The hole deepened and still deepened, but every time they heard the pick strike upon something, they were disappointed. It was only a stone. At last, Tom said, "It ain't any use, Huck. We're wrong again." "Well, but we can't be wrong. We marked the shadow exactly." "I know it. But then there's another thing." "What's that?" "Why, we only guessed at the time. I might have been too late or too early." Huck dropped the shovel. "That's it," said he. "That's the very trouble. We've got to give up this spot. We can't ever tell the right time. Besides, this kind of thing's too awful here this time of night with witches and ghosts a-fluttering around. I feel as if something's behind me all the time, and I'm afraid to turn around because maybe there are other ghosts in front. I've been creeping all over ever since I got here." "Well, me too, Huck. They most always put a dead man where they bury a treasure under a tree to look out for it." "Lordy!" "Yes, they do. I've always heard that." "Tom, I don't like to fool around much where there's dead people. You're bound to get in trouble with 'em, sure." Tom replied, "I don't like to stir 'em up either. Suppose this one here was to stick his skull out and say something." "Don't, Tom. It's awful." "Well, it just is. Huck, I don't feel comfortable a bit. Say, Tom, let's give this place up and try somewhere else." "All right, I reckon we better." "What'll it be?" Tom considered a while and then said, "The haunted house, that's it." "Blame it, I don't like haunted houses, Tom. Why, they're a darn sight worse than dead people. Dead people might talk, maybe, but they aren't like ghosts that come around when you ain't looking and peep over your shoulder all of a sudden. I couldn't stand such a thing as that, Tom. Nobody could." "Yes, but, Huck, ghosts travel around only at night. They won't hinder us from digging here in the daytime." "Well, that's so, but you know mighty well people don't go near the haunted house in a day nor night." "Well," Tom said, Nothing's ever been seen around that house except in the night. Just some blue lights slipping by the windows. No regular ghosts." "Well, where you see one of them blue lights flickering around, Tom, you can bet there's a ghost mighty close behind it. It stands no reason, because you know that only ghosts use blue lights." "Yes, that's so. But anyway, they don't come around in the daytime, so what's the use of our being afraid?" "Well, all right. We'll tackle the haunted house if you say so, but I reckon it's taking chances." They had started down the hill by this time. There in the middle of the moonlit valley below them stood the haunted house. It was utterly isolated. Its fences had gone long ago. Huge weeds smothered the doorsteps. The chimney had crumbled to ruin, and a corner of the roof was caved in. The boys gazed at the house a while. They half expected to see a blue light flit past a window. Then, talking in a low tone, they moved far off the right. They walked home through the woods on the far side of the Cardiff Hill. About noon the next day, the boys arrived at the dead limb tree. They had come for the tools. Tom was impatient to go to the haunted house. But Huck suddenly said, "Look here, Tom. Do you know what day it is?" Tom ran over the days of the week and then quickly lifted his eyes and startled, with a startled look in them. "My, I never once thought of it, Huck." "Well, I didn't either. But all at once, it popped onto me that it was Friday." "You can't be too careful, Huck. We might have got into an awful scrape, tuckling such a thing on a Friday." "Might? Better say we would. There's some lucky days, maybe, but Friday ain't. Any fool knows that. I don't reckon you was the first that found it out, Huck." "Well, I never said it was, did I? And Friday ain't all. Neither. I had a rotten bad dream last night. I dreamed about rats." No! Sure sign of trouble. Did they fight?" "No." "Well, that's good, Huck. When they don't fight, it's only a sign there's trouble around, you know. All we got to do is to look mighty sharp and keep out of trouble. We'll forget about digging today and play. Do you know Robin Hood, Huck?" "No." "Who's Robin Hood?" "Why, he was one of the greatest men that ever lived in England, and the best. He was a robber." "I wish I was." "Who did he rob?" "Only the sheriffs and the rich people and the kings. But he never bothered the poor. He loved them. He always divided his money with them." "Well, he must have been a great man." "He was, Huck. Oh, he was the noblest man that ever was. They ain't any such men now, I can tell you. He could lick any man in England with one hand tied behind him, and he could take his bow and hit a 10-cent piece every time, 1.5 miles away." "Well, we'll play Robin Hood. It's a lot of fun. I'll teach you." "I'm agreed." So they played Robin Hood all the afternoon. Now and then they looked down upon the haunted house and passed a remark about it. As the sun began to sink into the west, they walked home under the long shadows of the trees, and were soon buried from sight in the forest of Cardiff Hill. On Saturday, shortly after noon, the boys were at the dead tree again. They had a chat in the shade and then shuttered the tools and went to the haunted house. When they reached the house, there was something so weird and ghastly about the dead silence that they were afraid for a moment to go in. Then they crept to the door and took a trembling peep. They saw a weed-grown, floorless room, an ancient fireplace, broken windows, and a ruined staircase. Ragged and abandoned, cobwebs hung here, there, and everywhere. The boys entered softly, talking in whispers. Their ears were alert to catch the slightest sound, and their muscles were ready for instant retreat. In a little while, their fears lessened, and they gave the downstairs a critical examination. They admired their own boldness and wondered at it too. Next, they wanted to look upstairs. They agreed that if they went upstairs, it would be hard for them to escape from the house if an intruder came in. But they began to dare each other, and they soon threw their tools into a corner and climbed upstairs. Up there were the same signs of decay. In one corner, they found a closet that seemed mysterious, but there was nothing in it. Their courage was up now. They were about to go down and begin work when... "Shh," said Tom. "What is it?" whispered Huck, whitening with fright. "Shh. There. Hear it?" "Yes," Huck whispered. "Let's run." "Keep still. Don't you budge. They're coming right toward the door." The boys stretched themselves upon the floor. They pressed their faces against the holes in the planking so they could look downstairs. They lay waiting in a misery of fear. So, let's review our questions for today. We've already gone over the logic. Your comprehension questions today. What did the outside of the haunted house look like? Describe the inside of the haunted house. Why do you think the boys could only guess at the time when they dug at night? Why did the boys think the haunted house would be safe during the day? Why do you think Huck admired Robin Hood so much? Remember, you need to answer these in complete sentences. Writing. Tom and Huck admired Robin Hood. Which person from history or fiction do you admire? Write an essay that explains why you admire that person. Try to answer the following question. What person do you admire? What were that person's main accomplishments? What parts of the person do you admire most? What parts do you not admire? Why do you admire the person more than other people? Make your essay at least 80 words long. Think of this as an opinion piece like we've done in writing. Instead of a debate, you're trying to persuade people as to why this person that you're going to choose is great. Remember, you can pick anybody. If you're stuck on any questions, make sure you reread the story first. You also need to do your workbook. Take care. Bye.